Okay, the last lesson we learned, if you're gonna prove triangles are congruent, or any figure, you need to know two things: that all three corresponding angles are congruent. We're just gonna be doing triangles now. It won't be any more rectangles or anything like that. So all three corresponding angles and all three corresponding sides. So there's 6 things you need to know. So in these two, if these were congruent, we'd have to know that, say, that side equaled that side, this one equaled that one, and this equaled that one. Then we'd also have to know the angles. We'd have to know that this angle, since that's between the 1 and 2 marks, that would be C, 1 and 2 mark. And then this one would be between the 1 and 3, 1 and 3. And if you remember, if 2 angles are congruent to 2 other angles, the third angle has to be congruent. So there's all 6 things. So then you can write the congruent statement. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. So A is the same as E, so I'd have to put E first since I put A first. B is the same as F, and then it would be D. C and D are the same. Now, there's a shortcut for this to prove triangles are congruent. We don't need to show all 6 things. Today's lesson is just going to have 2 shortcuts. There's actually 5 once we learn them all. The first one is called SSS. The second one is called SAS. SSS is short for side, side, side. And SAS is short for side, angle, side. So what this means is, if you know that all 3 sides are congruent, you don't need to prove the angles. That's enough, because then the triangles have to be congruent to each other if all 3 sides are congruent. In this one, if 2 sides and the angle in between those 2 sides are congruent to the other 2 sides and the angle between them, then that's all you need to prove. You just need to show these 3 things. The reason why side, side, side works is if you took any 3, say you had a 4-inch piece of wood and a 7-inch piece of wood and an 8-inch piece of wood. If everyone had these 3 pieces and you could tape them together by the ends, or if you could just connect them, no matter how you connected these, all the triangles would end up exactly the same. You wouldn't be able to bend them at all, because then they wouldn't hook together. So if you took these and made a triangle, no matter how, you could turn it and everything, but every triangle would be that shape, and you'd be able to turn it and put it on top of there. So if 2 people had 2 sets of sticks and they made their 2 triangles, they would be congruent to each other, because these sides are congruent, these sides are congruent, and these sides are congruent. So in today's assignment, you're going to have a picture, and you got to state the reason, if they are congruent, what the reason is. So if you saw these 2, you would just put SSS. That's what makes them congruent. Now, the side angle side is they're a little different, but pretend they're the same. Side, angle, side. Now when you're listing these, you got to go in order. Like some people see something like this, and they say, well, can't that be side, angle, side if you go around that way? You can't skip from this side and this side to go to an angle. So this would not be side, angle, side. You'd have to go this way, because it would be side, and then it's a consecutive side, and then it's an angle. Okay? So you can't skip over the sides. So if you saw this picture, sides are congruent, the angle's congruent, the side's congruent. It's got to be the angle in between the two sides. So these are congruent. You don't have to put yes, you just got to put the reason. They're congruent because of side, angle, side. Now if they tried to trick you like this, they still have two sides and an angle that are congruent. This side, and this angle, but this one isn't SAS. Here it is side, angle, side. The angle's in between the two sides. But here the angle is not in between the two sides. This would be angle, side, side, which you can't have that as a reason, obviously. So, in all of the assignment today, in the book, in the worksheet, you're just going to be given a couple of triangles, and you got to say, it says state whether they're congruent. You don't have to put yes or no. If it's no, just put no. If it's yes, put the reason why. So I'll go through a few of them here so you can see. Now, a very common one that you're going to see a lot is like this. Okay, it is marked that these two sides are the same, these two are the same, and you're going to see this a lot where triangles are back to back like this, so they share a side. So obviously, the side of this triangle has to be the same as this triangle because it's the same side, it's shared. So these two are because of side, side, side. You may see one like this. This one, again, anytime you see a shared side, that's congruent to itself. So now this one would be side, angle, side. Whichever way you go, or you go this way, this side is congruent to this, these two angles are, and these two sides. So you would say side, angle, side. Now if you saw this one would be no. We don't know enough information. They might be, but we can't prove it. We do know these two sides, and we know it's got a shared side, but we don't know all three sides, or we don't know SAS. So that is a no. Now, sometimes you're going to see this in a lot of the pictures. Not just in this section, but the rest of the chapter. Remember, these arrows on here don't mean that they're congruent. It means that they're parallel. So you can't consider this congruent to that because of the arrows. It might be, but that doesn't prove it. But what it does prove is you need to remember what we learned before. Anytime you got parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and same side interior are supplementary. So in this picture, this angle would equal that one right there. Then we do know it's got a shared side, but we still don't have enough information. We would have to be given one more piece. Now a lot of times they just tell you that this equals that. So there we've got, nope, that's not a reason though, because that is angle, side, side. Angle, side, side. So this one would be no. But if they did give this, if they mark that it's parallel, again, this information won't be put in there for you. You need to recognize it. And then they also said that it's congruent. Now, even though it's not marked, it's got a shared side here, and alternate interior are still congruent. So now side, angle, side works. SAS on this triangle, SAS on this triangle. So obviously, if you have a couple of easy ones like this, it's just SSS. That's what makes those two congruent. Oh, another one that they put a lot besides the shared sides like this, where that's going to equal itself, is pictures like this. In this picture, even though it's not marked, you would know that vertical angles are congruent. So if they tell you these two are equal and these two are equal, they don't give you enough information, but you need to recognize that vertical angles are congruent. So this one would be side, angle, side, side, angle, side. Now sometimes they make these, you'll see these more often later in the chapter, but they'll put that these two sides are parallel, which means that this angle would equal that because they're alternate interior, and this angle would equal that, and then also vertical angles. But they'll be coming up later actually, but you'll see that a lot too. Okay, this picture is not quite like that picture. You may think that this equals that because it kind of looks like it would, but these aren't actually vertical angles. Vertical angles are made by two straight lines that intersect. These are not two straight lines that intersect. So we don't know if they're congruent. All we know is a side here and a side there. We don't know enough. So all you would do is you would just put no for that one. So again, all the problems, all you're going to have to do is put the reason if it is, and then no if it's not. And I'll do a couple on the board